Bye-bye. Don't ever use the words bye-bye. I hear you protest that it is how we bid farewell, especially to small children. But heed my words. Don't ever use the words bye-bye. If you're smart, and I'm sure you are, you may laugh and say, "Ha! He said bye-bye." But already you would be on the slippery slope to oblivion, because you would have uttered the words I've gone out of my way to warn against using. Not so smart after all. This is getting complicated, so we'll start again. Have any of you ever visited Wells House? Some will have, and some won't have. Matters not one way or another, because strangeness is something we all understand. And dedication. We all know what dedication is. And a sweet tooth. We all know what that is. At the end of the 1700s, and unknown to the Doynes who lived upstairs over the servants' quarters, an apothecary had sought refuge among the staff of the great house. Some of you will know that an apothecary is what you call a pharmacist. It seems that this wizard old gentleman had had an argument with one of his customers whom he was treating for a toothache. Anyone ever have a toothache? It's like the pain will never, ever go away. And this customer had, after a week of suffering intense pain, but refusing to allow the offending tooth to be pulled, warned the apothecary that if the pain was not gone by midnight that night, he would see to it that the apothecary was banished from the land forever. Bit of a tall order, you may say, but this customer was the local judge. And not a good judge at all, forever blaming and imprisoning poor people because they had no money. I mean, what do you expect? Oh, and he was very old and very crotchety and very, very mean. He was nearly as old as the whistled old apothecary, and that was saying something. Did I mention that the judge had set a deadline for midnight, and that it was midnight on the night of Halloween that year? No wonder the poor old apothecary was in such a state. In the servants' kitchen there was a fireplace which had been kept lighting for nigh on 200 years, ever since the house was first built. Non-stop. 200 years. Mrs. Doyle, who was in charge of the servants' quarters, had immediately pulled up her rocking chair beside the fire and ushered the apothecary into it. Rocking chairs were quite a luxury for a servant to have in those days, and the apothecary immediately felt safe and cared for. He stared into the fire, hot brew cupped in his gnarled and twisted hands, and watched as the glow in the fire occasionally burst into flickering flames. But he was a good man, good at his job, and wanted to find some way of helping the judge despite the awful fate threatened over him if he failed. He was a very private man as well, as men often are, and didn't like to share his life's problems. Mrs. Doyle was a chatterbox. "Are you all right there, Mr. Apothecary? Will I give you a top-up? I make a nice drop of the tea, so I do, though I do say so myself." The apothecary smiled politely and mouthed the words, "No, thank you very much," at the same time as raising his hand in a "no thank you" gesture. "I see you're enjoying the lovely fire there, so you are. Such stories are told around this fireplace in the dead of the night. And would you believe, this fire has never been out. Some say that ill will befall whoever may be responsible for letting the fire go out." As he relaxed over the fire and felt the warm glow on his tired old face, he was mixing up medicines in his imagination, trying to work out ingredients for a cure for the toothache, what root to mix with what herb, and what spice to give the elixir fire, and what oil to blend it all together. He was dedicated to his profession and the task in hand. The judge, meantime, was rocking to and fro in the tangled blankets of his mean and scruffy old bed, in the cold and empty house he grew up in, and now shared with no one. His father had been a butcher, and it was said that his mother was a witch. The judge had strange experiences from time to time in his life, like one day when summoned to Dublin to receive his gown, wig and seal of office. He had been told that he had missed the stagecoach. He closed his eyes for a moment, wondering what in Hades he was going to do, and when he opened his eyes, there he was at his lodgings in Dublin, in nightshirt and cap, ready for bed. There was that time when his village had been engulfed in a blizzard out of nowhere, and running across the road for shelter, he had slipped and slithered under an oncoming mail coach. He had been pronounced dead. He was waked, and as the coffin was being lowered, the mourners, there were only 3, I already said he was a very, very mean man, heard a rather demanding knocking coming from inside the coffin. When it was opened, he stepped out, completely nonplussed, observed that the snow had melted, and, fully dressed in his shroud, crossed the road and into the court, which was sitting that morning. But I'm wandering away from the apothecary. He was still gazing into the fire and puzzling when Mrs. Doyle asked if he'd like something to eat. He turned to indicate, "No, thank you." And as he began to turn back towards the fire, a roaring came down the chimney and red-hot coals and embers, smoke filling the kitchen in an instant, choking and poisonous as Mrs. Doyle fell to her knees, and other servants crawled and spluttered their way towards the door, and the apothecary swayed to his feet, hair aflame like an incendiary Medusa, hands raw with skin peeling, and eardrums bursting with the roaring, mocking guffawing of a voice the apothecary recognized straight away as that of the judge. Cascades of water flooded down the chimney then, and into the fireplace, turning and spitting into boiling steam. And in the midst of this blinding, convulsing turmoil, the apothecary felt an icy hand grip his wrist and begin to drag him up the chimney. "The fire! The fire!" Mrs. Doyle screamed as she groped her way through the black smoke mixed with white steam. "Don't let the fire go out! It's Halloween!" A cruel and unearthly laughter began to echo around the room as the apothecary struggled and hollered the best he could for the man of his age. "Ha ha 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 ha!" The laughter bellowed. "Do you think I can't read your mind, you old fool? You think I'm stupid for having a sweet tooth at my age, do you? Well, just wait until I've dragged you up this chimney. The roof has quite a view, and then it's bye-bye." By the time the smoke had cleared enough, there was no sign of the apothecary except for one burned and sodden shoe in the fireplace. But soot kept falling down in lumps as the sounds of scuffling and scraping came from the chimney. By the time the judge had dragged the apothecary out of the chimney pot and onto the roof, the apothecary was completely unconscious. The judge straddled him over the ridge for a moment. "I put together the ingredients you were thinking about earlier," he said to the senseless old apothecary. "Your mind is remarkably easy to read, and they worked perfectly. But you left me in pain for far too long, and had me wasting my valuable time trying to find where you were hiding from me. So I had to indulge myself in a little of the magic I inherited from my dear mother. And here we are. What a fine view this is from Wells House. The finest house and the finest view in the county. And what a send-off I'm giving you. He lifted one leg back up over the ridge and gave the unconscious apothecary the slightest of nudges. As he slid down the roof, the judge raised his hand and gave a little wave, like a toddler waves. Bye-bye, the judge cackled as he drifted up and away from the roof and back to the tumbled, jumbled bed he had left behind only an hour or so ago. The apothecary was never seen again. Bye-bye. Oh.